Hello and welcome to this It's Finally Here edition of the Purple Journal podcast. I am your host, Joe Johnson, owner of the increasingly growing purplePTSD.com. Here with my draft weekend buddies, Joe Oberly of Purple PTSD and the Sports Post.
Hello.
And Master Brewer at Mankato Brewery. Every bottle has his literal blood, sweat, and tears in it. That's where it gets its flavor. And Luke Braun is here from what I'm hoping is nicer weather down in Los Angeles County.
It is beautiful. Also, that was maybe the happiest intro to a podcast to date.
You know, well, we haven't had one for a while. I think I've just gotten out of touch with my doom and gloom, but I'm, like we talked about off air, man, it's nice that the draft's finally going to be here and all this speculation. And
I don't know, Luke. I think that Mankato Brewery just dropped how many points in stock value after that?
I'm not keeping track of that. With all the people plugged into this who are shareholders in Mankato Brewery.
The NASDAQ, they're all on the stock floor right now. But yeah, I wanted to buy the stock when it was low, so part one of the plan complete. But yeah, Luke writes for us too. He's our draft expert, or at least the one that cares the most about the draft on this show. So yeah, I mean that's kind of the.
Why do you got to do Micah dirty like that? He's the draft guy.
Yeah, sorry, Micah. We got a new writer named Micah Tweetin, who I'm still trying to figure out if that's his real last name or if it's like a Twitter thing, but he's been doing a lot of mock drafts this week, and I'm sure he'll be a little bit relieved too to stop looking at. It's funny to see. There's been so much coverage that between him and Simon, our other draft guru, it's like mock draft number 200. This one, in case everyone gets the flu, it's like all these weird variables are getting thrown into the mocks. So I think everyone's kind of ready for the.
It's time to actually have the things happen.
Yeah. And
yes.
You can tell we're all very jazzed up about it.
Well, and
I'm super excited.
When you got the first night could be a major buzzkill for Vikings fans, because especially and for Vikings beat writers who are going to be out at Winter Park staring at a empty screen with the Vikings logo on it and nobody standing in front of them announcing a pick. So that's kind of dull, but maybe the Vikings will find a way to jazz that up.
Do the beat writers still go out there when they don't have a day one pick?
I'll be out there.
In case there's a trade, even though Spielman was like, we're not going to do that.
He said something could fall out of the sky, and for that reason right there, everybody has to be there, because if you're not, you miss it and what have you. I'll be out there staring at the other beat writers. And
there is stuff to root for in the first round.
Yeah.
Because we need some things to fall our way for things to fall right at number 48. So the Packers today, they just signed Jaury Evans, who was a guard who started for New Orleans for a while. And that's actually pretty good news for us, despite the fact that might be a good, signing for the Packers. But draft-wise, that might be good news for us, because the Packers could have been a destination for an interior offensive lineman, which is kind of sparse, and now that's one less team looking at that. So you kind of want to root for stuff like that. Teams like the Colts, we kind of want them to take a defender and maybe not take a tackle or take Forrest Lamp, because the fewer people that take tackles or offensive linemen in the first round, that means the more drop to us. So there's stuff like that to root for. And then there's some guys with questionable off-field issues that could make them slip, but actually not be a legitimate reason.
Potentially, though, it's possible, too, that demonstrates they have a real need at that position, and then they might need to draft somebody younger underneath them as well. So, but yeah, on outside looking in, it bodes better for the Vikings in that case.
Yeah, but we can also root for guys like there are some weird situations with Reuben Foster and. Oh God, who was the other guy who had a diluted sample? Jabril Peppers. Both of those guys had diluted urine samples, which isn't a positive. It's diluted. It's they had one too many Gatorades.
But they treat it as a positive, don't they?
Yeah, the NFL treats it as a positive. but it doesn't really have any indication that there will be I mean, this isn't a Josh Gordon situation or a Percy Harvin where he just outright failed.
Yeah, they're in the first thing of the protocol or whatever you call it. They come in. They're not. It takes that first step for them that they didn't need to take it all, and makes the second one, which is more severe, come sooner. I guess the way I understand it, but
if there ever is another problem, but it seems like with I think it was Reuben Foster was like, I had food poisoning and was drinking a lot of water to like get off me. And if that ends up being true, and he's never had it, I don't think he's had any sort of off-field problems in the past, then that just means his draft stock fell and somebody's getting a steal. So we can kind of root for those things we can root for teams to overrate those things, and then maybe we get a guy like Reuben Foster at 48 would be absolutely insane. He's a top.
Am I understanding this correctly, that he's cited for diluted urine sample? He's drank too much water, so basically he's in trouble for drinking water?
Yes.
Is that
correct? It's that dumb, and it's always been that dumb.
I always figured it was like they had a diluting agent or something, not just that they literally drink too much water. I mean, how do you know how much water to drink? I mean, you gotta...
Exactly.
It's ridiculous and needs to change. Yeah. But there are some teams who, take a really old school mentality to this and go, oh, well, clearly he was, trying to cover something up, and I don't want that anywhere near my team. And, now somebody behind him just got Reuben Foster, and that's a huge prize for that team.
Yeah.
Man,
it's bizarre. Amazing. It's not like
neither of those guys. It's still pretty unlikely, but if you're watching in the first round and you want something to root for the Vikings, root for teams to not take Reuben Foster or Jabril Peppers or the guys we kind of always thought were going to fall, like Malik McDowell.
Joe Mason.
Well, speaking of diluted, somebody who was diluted for a long time finally signed a contract.
Yeah. Big news.
Segue.
That was
fire.
That was really good. I'm intimidated all of a sudden. But before we get into the draft deeply, we had a couple things from the last few days we wanted to touch on. Obviously, as Joe alluded to, Adrian Peterson finally found a suitor, probably the only suitor available, much to my chagrin, after testing my ability to make a prediction on where he would end up for the last couple weeks. Mainly out of boredom. What was that?
Yeah, I thought I heard a report on the radio earlier this week when they were talking about it from Charles Robinson from Yahoo.com, I believe. He was talking about how all these different teams brought him in, the Seahawks and the Patriots and whoever else, and you throw the Vikings in that bunch. Nobody offered him a contract, including Minnesota. This was the first contract he got, and in fact, he said that when he went to New England, they looked at him, worked him out, and said he was in great shape, but they were so concerned about his age and his injury history that they backed away because they last year used LeGarrette Blount. They used him a huge number of carries he had.
299, I think.
Yeah, and they didn't think that Peterson would hold up for that, so that's why they didn't offer him anything. But it's really kind of sad in a way. I'm a little saddened by it that he's dropped this far down. There's part of me that would just like I hated to see Randy Moss go, and you see a great player like Peterson, Hall of Famer, not end his career as a Viking. It's kind of sad that he's going to go down there and try to fit into the system where they have Mark Ingram, who had 1,000 yards last year and caught all kinds of passes, and we've got other backs. It's bizarre. It might work out great for him, but I don't know. It's strange to me.
It just seemed like a lot of people.
There's a great piece from Greg Rosenthal at NFL.com about how well Adrian fits into the system and like how they don't use shotgun as often as other teams, so that's good for Peterson and like all this other stuff, and how he'll fit in with Mark Ingram.
I think they were one of the teams that ran the eye at least a high enough percentage of times to justify it. But what I was going to say was that it just seemed like a lot of people disregarded his visit to the Saints more than other teams because of the Ingram situation and what that means for how they plan to use him. I just can't imagine, especially, I'm surprised they gave him, like, all of his money was pretty much guaranteed. A lot of it was a signing bonus, but I think it was like $3.5 million all guaranteed. 2 of it was a signing bonus, but I can't imagine they're going to bring him in to give him the ball 5 times a game. I mean, he needs to get a certain amount of carries under his belt to even be effective. So I just, in the same vein of what Joe said, I don't want him to like go down there and then just, you know, get a couple carries a game and it just be really pathetic. Like, I don't want that. You know, I know he's not the greatest guy in the world, but still, it'd be kind of a sad end to a great career.
It's going to be hard for him to reach his beloved milestone of passing Emmitt Smith, which he's always talked about doing. If he's not going to get a lot of work, it's going to take him a while to do that. So I don't know.
I think, volume aside, you know, I think a lot of people are talking about him still as though he's going to be like the bell cow, and how are they going to make that work? I really think the Saints just got an average between the tackles thumper for about the right price for what you want to pay for that, and that's like a nice little move for them.
It's low risk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If he does get hurt, they've got plenty of backs to fill in the void. So yeah, you just wonder what Mark Ingram thinks, you know. I mean, is this a threat to him? And I don't know. It'll be interesting. It'll be fun to watch him come Monday night, first game of the season at US Bank Stadium.
That is fun. I do like the people that are like taking it personally. They're like that Adrian like slighted the Vikings, like as if he had any other choice.
That's exactly it.
And B, as if like he owes the team something, and like the Saints are still some sort of rival for a thing that happened like 8 years ago.
You know, I know that he like dislikes Kevin Warren and everything, but it's not like he had, like you said, a handful of teams to choose from, and he did this one out of some sort of personal grudge. I mean, that's not something that would surprise me if it were the case, but I don't think that the variables lined up that way. You know, I hate the Saints and Sean Payton, but
yeah, everything the Saints did was like so long ago, and almost everybody who was involved with that, other than a few people who were like, I guess, aware of but didn't actively stop it, is like all that's left. So it's not like he's going to be like, well, you know who I really like, Greg Williams. He's like, he just took the only team that like gave him a contract, and then he's going to go be fine there, and then that's it.
Yes, and the Vikings, you know, could they have offered him $4 million a year, you know, or 2 years guaranteed, and got him back? No, they did not want him. They moved on from him.
Yeah, he owes the team nothing.
Yes, absolutely.
And vice versa, definitely.
Yeah, it's time to move on, and it's the next chapter, and he went and picked the only team that really wanted him, and that's fine. But people have this like, I swear there's like this contingent of Vikings fans that live in like this alternate reality where Adrian Peterson is still the best running back, and he's still the guy he was in like 2008. And he was the entire team, so letting him go was this terrible move. And now he's going to this rival that, as if, you know, the Saints play in the NFC North, and it's just this like totally alternate, bizarro world. And I would love to see the world from their eyes.
Yeah, it's not probably the happiest set of circumstances, but
just like imagine what life is like.
It's not. It sounds like borderline personality disorder, like it's a personal slight towards them or something. But you know, so I saw some people saying this is like our Favre moment, and it's like no, that's not even close. You know, I overreact a lot, but even I'm not. You know, I said this off the air too. I wrote that I kind of had mixed emotions about it. I just didn't want to see him in a Saints jersey, but. At the end of the day, I don't really care all that much. You know, I think the biggest thing I took from it was that, and this was based on my own theory that he might come back after the draft, is that basically the Vikings are going to be looking pretty heavily at running back on Friday.
They've interviewed like 8 of them. They're getting someone.
Yeah. After Favre went to the Vikings, all bets are off for the rest of time that this can happen. I mean, this is a part of the NFL. Teams, the legends on one team are going to move to another team if they want to keep playing. In that case, they moved to the closest, more fiercest rival when Favre came to the Vikings. This happens. It's difficult to see him move on, but you know it will become what it is. And certainly, like Luke said, the Saints are not a big rival. They stole a game from the Vikings. You might be able to say, but
at the cost of the rest of their Super Bowl window, and then they went 7-9 for like 4 years.
Yeah.
What was their record last year?
7-9.
Okay.
They went 7. I'm going to look this up, actually. They have been in the throes of mediocrity for forever because their defense has been historically bad.
Right.
Like, they made, despite Drew Brees' contributions and him being the yards leader, like, every year, they still, like, can't string together a winning record.
Yeah, it's a defense. Last year, every time I would always check the roster, who's playing against the Saints defense this week, for fantasy football, because it's a good way to score.
This is insane. So they went, the year that they got the Bounty Gate suspension and Sean Payton got suspended and stuff, they went 7-9. That was 2012. Then they went 11-5 the next year, made the playoffs, won a single game, and then they've been 7-9 every year since.
Wow.
So, yeah, they're not exactly like a fierce NFC contender.
I was wondering if maybe he'll get a chance to play in another playoff game, but it doesn't sound like that's going to happen.
It's totally out of the question as long as they have Breeze.
Yeah, it's speculation that this is going to put him in the playoffs, I saw somebody saying.
This isn't what's going to do it. It's going to be the moves they made on defense. They did make some pretty good moves on defense.
With it, that's for sure.
And they'll be able to get a solid draft together because of how deep the draft is defensively. So if they play their cards right, which historically they have not, but if they do play their cards right, they should be able to string together at least an average defense, and that could be enough to get him in the playoffs. I wouldn't put it past the Saints this year.
So what does he do on Monday night, opening game against the Vikings?
Ooh.
What is he?
Is that here or there?
It's here.
It's here. It's at US Bank Stadium, yeah.
Tears an ACL.
What does he do? No, he doesn't tear an ACL. He gets 50 yards, but 2 touchdowns. Like two goal line scores, and people will say he torched us, even though he only got like 45 yards or something.
Yeah, kind of like that Jags game when he came back that first week. He had those short touchdowns, but he didn't really do it. Like 38 yards, I think, in 2012.
And Mark Ingram. And we'll get just slayed by Drew Brees, and then people will be like, "Ha, Adrian Peterson beat you." And it's like, no, Drew Brees scored 4 touchdowns.
I heard Paul Allen say he won't say he's loose if he gets loose because he's not a Viking anymore. So.
But the "it's loose" isn't dead totally if Vikings get loose.
That's right.
Well, speaking of players that fans have a weird emotional attachment to for no reason, Teddy Bridgewater news is in the air.
Take that back. You monster.
Had to say it. I think it was this morning that it came out. I don't know, it's all blur, but that the Vikings are reportedly going to be declining his 2018 option, which I don't know if that's a surprise or if it's supposed to be. I mean, it makes a lot of sense outside of Minnesota anyway. I know most of the articles I read nationally framing it were like, yeah, they don't even know if he's going to be able to play again, so why would they extend his contract? But
there's a really important wrinkle to this.
Yes, I saw it too.
I'm trying to find because Ian Rappaport tweeted it out and worded it very well.
The clause.
There's a clause that basically says if he stays the whole year on the physically unable to play list, his 2017 contract just rolls over to 2018. It adds a year at the exact same level, so it basically just gets his last year deferred. So there was no real need to pick up his option because if he's ready to play this year, he'll play. But in the extremely likely scenario that he is not ready to play, 2018 will be his year.
So does he not get paid then?
Yeah,
that I'm not sure of.
Or does he get paid twice and it's just not on the books?
Yeah, I think he's on the PUP list, physically unable to perform. So he still gets paid, but I think you can his roster spot opens up, I believe. I mean,
and it doesn't hit against the cap.
Correct, something like that. I'm not sure of all the ins and outs, but it's in the Vikings. Definitely in their interest to do what they're reporting that they're going to do. So it makes perfect sense because I don't think he'll play this year.
With that in mind,
they have no
the
time
two options. Pardon me. Sorry. Go ahead.
I just said they have no timetable yet on when he's going to return, and they're not throwing that out there. I mean, it's going to take it. It's a horrific injury if he comes. The question is he going to come back at all? So I don't see him playing this year. I see them signing Case Keenum to bolster their quarterback for a reason that they probably don't think he's going to play either, and so there's that roster spot. So I suspect this is, what Luke was just talking about. It's exactly what's going to happen. It makes perfect sense.
And now they have no reason to rush him back either.
Exactly. You actually have incentive not to. So with this tolling thing, the option basically becomes he will be on the team in 2018 for his current salary, which is very small. Or if you pick up his option, he'll be on the team in 2018 for a much greater salary. So it's just like the same thing but cheaper. And the only way you get burned doing this is if he comes back this season, and then you don't have him on contract for next year. But if that's the case, you just have your healthy franchise quarterback and you can just re-sign him. And he has a lot of leverage, but like whatever.
Yeah, and I wonder how that is going to affect like Xavier Rhodes' contract and stuff like that.
Helps a lot. It's one less giant contract on your books that now with Rhodes and with Floyd potentially, whatever's going on with that, and then with the upcoming guys coming down the pipeline like Barr and whatever. That's with being able to defer any money you're going to give to Teddy or whoever the quarterback is. That is money that you can then use to like front load these defenders and like get a better contract for them. And then that helps you plan for the future better. Like it's a pretty big deal to not have a giant quarterback contract on your books for another year.
Right. It's definitely cap friendly move for him. There's no question. So we remain in this purgatory of is Teddy alive or is he not, and do his Instagram stories mean anything, or did that one report from that doctor who's never looked at his knee be the it's like redshirting him for a year. And
that's what I was saying.
Same thing. Yeah.
You got him in the future. If he's your quarterback of the future and he can come back, why rush him back if you don't need him to? You extend Sam Bradford and you got you're set for a couple of years, and then you bring Teddy back in good health and you're sure that he's able to play and you roll with him.
And I think I didn't think about front-loading contracts either. I was worried that maybe the uncertainty would screw some things up with like Rhodes and stuff, but
yeah, the nice thing about front-loading contracts too is players like that more. They like getting their money now instead of having to wait for 3 years and they could get injured in that. So that means you can get a maybe cheaper deal if you can front-load it, and then that really, really pays off later when all the money comes out. When you're in the third year of the deal and all the money was front-loaded, like that's amazing.
And not having that money at the back of the contract helps the team, as we just saw with Adrian Peterson. $18 million comes off the books when they unload him.
Yeah,
that paid for both of our tackles.
Yeah, it did.
Both Reef and Remmers were. I think it was actually less. I think we had like $500,000 left over or something.
From AP?
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Well, speaking of tackles, I know obviously the theme of the show, at least when I post it in a couple hours, is going to be tomorrow's draft, and that's been a big focus, or at least people's predictions going into Friday, is whether or not the Vikings will go with at least a guard after picking up Remmers and Reef. So, yeah, I wanted to just start out, I guess, by asking, seeing what you guys thought about whether or not you're excited for the draft, despite my cadence. I don't know, I love the draft, personally. I think it's one of the more fun times of year, at least since Spielman has been here, just because of the amount of possibilities and stuff. But I know you guys are kind of chomping at the bit for this thing to get going.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready for pre-draft season to be over, and I'm ready for the actual thing to happen.
Me, it's like I was saying earlier. I'm more of I like to for the draft to get here so I can see who they take and respond to that, rather than try to predict all these permutations of who might do this and what might do that. It's fun to look at the mocks and see what those possibilities are, and then see them change on draft night. So it's kind of fun, because then it's the unexpected is exciting. But we'll see. Last year's was kind of, the Vikings had a first round pick, and it was less than overwhelming once the season got going. So We'll see.
There's very few scenarios where the Vikings don't have an opportunity to come away with a long-term starter, despite not having a first-round pick. At 48, it's all but guaranteed that a long-term cornerstone starter at some position is available, and it's just going to be up to the Vikings to actually identify and select that guy and not do something stupid.
Who is that guy, Luke?
Oh, it could be Dan Feeney. It could be Taylor Moton. It could be a whole number of players. It could be if you believe in Curtis Samuel, if you believe in Jabril Peppers, and you think that his stupid diluted P sample is going to make him fall, which some people are saying that is an actual possibility for him to fall to the mid-second round. So there's a whole bunch of people it could be. It's up to the Vikings to, trust their scouts. That's why they hire those guys.
Is Mixon in the mix?
Sure. He's about a mid-second rounder. That's kind of what the reporters and the insiders and all those guys say, that, it's pretty likely that he falls out of the first and that there's only a handful of teams that even have him on their board. I love the thing Spielman said about the red dot. So he's probably a red dot player, and I love that there's a word for it now.
What is red dot meaning? What?
He gave a presser. Yeah, you can explain it, Joe.
He just says they go through they do their due diligence on all the players, and they have their big board with all these names, and they will put a red dot by someone who has a red flag for off the field issues or something else they don't want in a player, whether lazy or something else. So they'll put that red dot on there so they see that as kind of a stop sign that says, okay, when he comes up here, you see that name and you get all excited. Oh, there's a red dot. We can't pick that.
It means, silly. Maybe pick him later, if Joe Mixon's there in the third round still because everybody's ridiculous, then go get her, stuff like that.
It's silly. I understand it, because things are flying like crazy on that night, especially you would think in a war room when they're all, just like as we're watching it unfold on TV, we're saying, oh, God, this happened. And each guy that's taken off the board, all kinds of things come into play. The phone rings. You got 15 minutes. So, it's probably exciting to maybe you need that red dot just to remember what you had decided before you went into the draft. But, we've all been
it's important to designate, like, players who are, if you have Joe Mixon 40th on your board, that doesn't mean that he's a worse player than the guy who's 39th on your board. But, if you have him 40th, but there's a red dot, that, kind of, reminds you, oh, hey, he's actually very, very talented, but he's down this low because of the off-field issues. And it's nice to have a designation for, the guys that are maybe lower than they should be on the board because of non-football reasons. It's important to have all those guys pointed out.
Right. I guess I've heard in the last week or so that even though he has that red dot, maybe for some teams, his stock has been inching up a little bit. And maybe,
with everybody else getting in trouble around him, now he doesn't look so bad because everybody else's things are in the media cycle.
Yeah, and I saw an article by somebody from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel that he reached out to like 50% of the teams, like an executive from 16 teams essentially, and that one of the executives said that Mixon was the best player in the draft, period.
I saw that too. That's hilarious.
So it's going to be weird to see like how the draft shakes out. The fact that certain teams have said they won't draft him no matter what, against the fact that he is, at least a top 3 back. I would guess.
He's probably third. He's probably, if you took away his off field, he probably would end up behind Fournette and McCaffrey, but ahead of Cook. Because I don't know what the deal with Cook is. He's also got weird off field that nobody's talking about.
Like, I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, Dalvin Cook has some weird off field stuff, but something just came out today that like apparently a lot of it was like sabotage. I don't know. I haven't looked into it, but his situation is super weird.
I wonder what color dot that is.
I don't know, a rainbow one?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. But, I mean, I've written a few articles saying essentially that there's the 2 guys that I want on Friday night are either Mixon or Curtis Samuel, the wide receiver hybrid running back from Ohio State, who we've talked about on the show before. But Luke, I know you I think you talked about this on the show 2 weeks ago too, but if you want to kind of explain how you came to the 9 players, like essentially
Yeah.
the article about the 9 players that one of which we're gonna take in the second round.
Yeah, so I have a running bet with my dad. We bet a beer on this, and he gave me 9 players to name. And if I can name the Vikings' first draft pick with one of those 9 chances, I win, and he gets the field.
Nice.
So that's it's a fun. Last year we did a fun bet. I did a mock draft, and if I was close enough, then I won the bet. And I think I don't remember, but I do remember it was close. So however we did it. So this year I get 9 players because doing a first round mock draft is dumb when you don't have a pick. So my 9 players are 4 of them are linemen, and I think it's really, really likely that it's one of those linemen. 2 of them are running backs. 2 of them are defenders that would only be selected because they had fallen so far for various reasons. And then one of them is Curtis Samuel, however you want to define him as a position.
If they had a first round pick, would you get less than 9 picks in this bet?
Yes, probably.
Okay. All right.
Almost sure. Actually, it would probably just be they're taking Forrest Lamp, and I'll bet you a beer that they take Forrest Lamp if they're at 14.
Yeah, I stole the premise of this game to give away Vikings Garden Gnomes on our message board, and I think most people are leaning towards Dan Feeney there. So as much as I want him, now I almost don't because I'll go bankrupt if that's the case. But
yeah, if I had to put my money on one guy, it'd be Dan Feeney.
Okay. Who's besides Mixon? Who's your other running back?
Alvin Kamara, and I would hate it. I actually strongly would dislike the pick, but they have met with him twice. He's incredibly athletic, and we know that like Rick Spielman tends to kind of be intoxicated with that. His tape is very Trent Richardson-y. He often makes poor decisions. He's kind of his own worst enemy, and he doesn't really know. Like he has great short area quickness, and he can make guys miss in tight spaces, but he often doesn't know how to like utilize that in a good way, and that's super concerning. He'd be a guy that like has to be limited his first year and then develop, and we don't have time for that. But the Vikings have shown a ton of interest, so I begrudgingly put him on the list.
Yeah, I think for me the reason I have yeah.
What?
I thought someone said hello randomly.
Anyways, what were you saying?
I thought it was Joe. Oh no, I thought
It was. I'm sorry, I pushed the wrong button on my computer and I muted me. And I lost you guys, and I said, "Oh my God, what happened?"
We're a professional outfit here. No, but I was going to say that I think the Vikings, more than anything right now on paper, need a playmaker. And when it comes to like someone like Kamara, who isn't going to contribute in the first year, I just don't see how the logic overlaps there. Like I think they need someone that can pitch in right away.
They're just intoxicated with potential.
Is he the guy
because he's got the upside.
He's not the guy from Oklahoma too.
No, that's a guy. He's not a second round pick. If we picked him, he'd be more in like the mid rounds, maybe late day 2. And I would love him. He would be awesome. And actually, I think he filled in for Mixon, and he like produced amazingly. So he's a less high ceiling guy. He's a lower ceiling guy because his athleticism isn't crazy like Alvin Kamara's is. But he's like a bruiser, and he's exactly the style of player we need. So taking a player like that in the later rounds is cheaper and potentially a better fit.
I really want to see what the fan response is going to be if we do end up taking a running back, because I think of any article that's been written on the site that I've cited, your article titled Latavius Murray does not replace Adrian Peterson, I use that like 5 times a day just because people, when I bring up either bringing back Peterson or drafting a running back, a lot of the comments are, we already got a running back. Like, why did we sign Murray? Like, where have you been? We don't need another one. And I don't think people realize like the difference in roles that running backs have in today's NFL, and like what Murray and McKinnon are going to be able to do. But I just have a feeling that if we pick Mixon on Friday night, people are just going to be either super angry, confused, or angrily confused, which is my favorite state of consciousness.
I think you're going to get that. I think you're going to get that with no matter who they pick, right? You know, there's...
Oh, definitely. Unless it's Dan Feeney or like one of the good linemen.
Yeah.
Right? what do I wrote, the only story I wrote on this coming into this week was about, looking at all the needs that they have, and I figured the Vikings would end up taking a defensive tackle, as I kind of said in the last show. And I don't know if, Luke said it was a pipe dream for Malik McDowell to drop down that far. It probably is, but I'm hoping that one of these decent defensive linemen drops down, and we're one of those on your top 9, Luke.
The only defensive lineman on the top 9 was McDowell. I think so. Here's something interesting. Dayton Jones actually gave an interview this week where he said that he was going to largely be playing 3-tech. And that kind of changes my perception of like what the Vikings strategy is, because it means that they might not be prioritizing defensive tackle very highly because they might be considering Dayton Jones as the starting 3-tech, whatever your opinion is of that. So I think taking a defensive lineman at 48 might be a lot less likely with Jones on the team, unless it's a guy like McDowell that falls way further than he should. They'll probably take one at some point, but at 48 specifically, that seems a lot less likely.
Unless that Smoke, Rick Spielman Smoke, instructed to Dayton Jones, say this.
Maybe. There's only one guy that would be available that they'd be interested in, and that's Chris Wormley from, I think, Michigan?
Michigan, yeah.
But they haven't really shown any interest in him, and they haven't interviewed or really taken too much. I don't even know. Did they go to Michigan's Pro Day? Were they even there? So yeah, I don't know. They don't seem to have much connection with him, so that would surprise me a lot. But he would be available down there, and otherwise the 3-techs in the interior defensive line is actually a pretty shallow class this year. It's a lot of edge rushers, not a lot of interior guys. And then there was Caleb Brantley, but then he hit a woman. So
join the club.
Jesus, it's like a lot of people.
I know, man. I guess it goes hand in hand with head injuries and aggression, but. Joe, your pick with the defensive tackle thing, did your mind change when you found out more about Sharif Floyd, or were you thinking that all along?
No, it's definitely Sharif Floyd situation motivated, because I think that surprised the Vikings. I'm not surprised them. They wondered what was going on, and all of a sudden this comes out, and they had to be expecting him to come back this year and be the starter. And right now it's really a huge question mark. So therefore, with that, I think you look at the whole signing of Dayton Jones signals that there's an immediate need there. And so that's where I'm taking it from. I think it's there's plenty of other needs they have in the team, but this is there's a big hole in the defensive line right now, and Zimmer, his whole defense is predicated on stopping the run and pressuring the passer, and he doesn't. He wants somebody in there that can count on. So I think he would lobby for that.
Can I put on a tinfoil hat real quick? I think they knew about Floyd's nerve damage immediately, and it just came out now. Because if you look back at Zimmer's comments, the ones that made it seem like Sharif was in the doghouse, his comments were very nihilistic. They were like, well, he's gone and it's over and we just should move on. And he's not there. And people initially construed that as like, oh, he seems kind of snippy about it. Like he seems kind of angry about Sharif. But I think he was legitimately saying, like, don't expect this dude back for a while. We have to move on. So
that's a good those quotes
I think they knew about it.
Seemed really bitchy for
the
circumstances, and so that does make sense.
So with that added context of hindsight, I think they knew about it. So they've definitely been targeting defensive linemen, but they haven't, other than McDowell. I don't think they've interviewed any defensive linemen that are projected to go early. So I think they're looking to grab a depth guy, but it seems like as of now the plan is to go with Jones as the de facto starter. However you feel about that, I don't feel the worst about it.
Didn't they?
Yeah, Jones. He lost weight to go down to go play outside linebacker, and then was bad at outside linebacker, so he's going to come back to his natural playing weight, which to play 3-tech. And he also, he rushed inside a lot at the Packers and was pretty good at it anyways, so the extra weight will just be an added bonus. Dom Capers absolutely misused that guy, which doesn't shock me at all, because Dom Capers is bad at this.
Yeah.
Which is good for the Vikings.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, never fire him. He ruined 2 years of Clay Matthews' career so Dayton Jones can play outside linebacker.
So did I miss you talk about the defenders that you had on your list?
The only other defender that I have is Buda Baker, who is another guy he's like 30th on everybody's big board. Like, he's highly unlikely to fall down to us. The only reason he would is because he's probably the 5th safety in the class. Although I did write that before Jabril Peppers had a diluted urine sample, so maybe he's the 4th one now. But, like, he's behind Malik Hooker and Jamal Adams, who are both top 10 talents. He's probably behind Obi Melifonwu now, who is a player who had an insane combine, and he's like a workout warrior. He has pretty good tape, too. He'll actually probably be a pretty good player. And he's behind Jabril Peppers, who projects as a strong safety as well. So, like, do you really think that in the top 50 there are going to be 5 safeties that go? Like, that's really, really unusual, and that might cause Buda Baker to fall just because he plays at a position that doesn't have a lot of value. And the cool thing about him is, so he's a safety, he's a pretty versatile safety, not as good in the run game, but what he really has is a great skill set to project to nickel corner, so he can push Mackenzie Alexander and also push Sendejo at the same time, killing 2 birds with 1 stone, and that's a big deal.
Absolutely.
It also means the base package needs to be used less, so the hole at will linebacker is like a little bit mitigated. Like, we still need a guy, but it's less important.
Right, and you see some. I saw a mock draft today that has the Vikings taking an outside linebacker with that pick, and I just don't see that. You know,
it would have to be like Reuben Foster, who was the other diluted sample guy, or the only linebacker I can really see them picking is Raekwon McMillan, who is like a true like Mike, middle linebacker, like run thumper. And then we would move Kendricks out to Will, but it really doesn't seem like they're interested in doing that. Zimmer mentioned it offhandedly like 2 years ago, and then Kendricks killed it at the middle linebacker position, so it doesn't seem like it's a good thing they want to mess with.
I guess this is as good a time as any to ask you guys. One of my larger pet peeves with this time of year is the argument about best player available in the draft and whether or not you think that that's something that would dictate what pick the Vikings will make at 48, or I was going to ask, if all things being equal, what position group do you think they would draft from if they had their pick of their top player from that position? But I guess the better way to just ask it is, are you guys even a believer in the best player available? Or like me, I think I don't know in practice if any team does that all the time and just takes the best player available. Otherwise, teams would be drafting multiple quarterbacks and things like that.
Vikings didn't last year. I mean, I don't think they took the best player available in the first round, but I think teams do that.
I think they did. There was not a lot of talent available in that part of the draft. I mean, some players like some second, third round players ended up outperforming it, obviously, but like if you look at what was around in the draft, like there was a lot of trash right there.
Well, I think teams do that. They certainly call it that if it's whether it is or not the best player.
I think they do it sometimes, but I don't think that's like a philosophy you do all the time.
No, you never take it to the extreme. It's a false dichotomy.
Okay, yeah, there's people that tell me that the great teams do that every year, and it's that you can't build a team
trash.
That way. That doesn't even make sense.
No, yeah, that's dumb. Right, the best teams trade down a lot. That's what the good teams do.
Yeah, I saw just on an article before the show saying this is why the Patriots always trade down, and that was essentially
because it gives you more bites at the apple, and ultimately the draft is a crapshoot. Yeah, there's no real like. So you take the best play, the highest player on your board, and you trust your board. That's what everybody says. But your board is to a degree dictated by need. So if we're looking at a guy like Malik McDowell versus Dan Feeney, Malik McDowell is light years better as a prospect than Dan Feeney. So we might just take him, even though we need guard way more than we need, Malik McDowell. But if you're looking at a guy like Dan Feeney or a guy like Chris Wormley, and those guys are on a similar level as prospects, now you look at the guy who maybe, who you need more, who's the guard. And their board has already figured all that out. Who are they going to take over who? They've got it all listed out, and they're ready to go, and they just need to trust that when they get into the war room and not, like, do a dumb thing and panic and trade up for Ponder.
Or even arguably take Treadwell or miss...
They had Treadwell really high on their board. That's not. I don't agree with you when you say it was a panic move. I think they were excited to get Treadwell. They might be wrong about that, but you know, it was the evaluation that was wrong, not the in the moment decision.
I guess I'm basing that on the circumstances feel the same as the ponder move, and I guess the underlying narrative that people say that we really want.
I mean, I think Josh Doxson was high.
Yeah.
But I think they were both very high on the Vikings board. So I think they were, you know, they wanted Doxson more, but they still wanted Treadwell. I don't think it was the same as the Ponder thing where they panicked and went up and did, you know. I think Spielman has learned that lesson.
I hope so. Guess we'll find out. I saw you on Twitter, I think either today or yesterday, said something about how you were surprised that people are talking about firing a top 5 draft GM in Spielman, and I wasn't sure. Is there really a narrative out there that people outside of maybe me have said that? And I
there's a lot of hot seat, and if he doesn't, you know, if we don't make the NFC Championship, then we should get rid. Patrick Royce for the Strib is a big proponent of that. There are a couple guys at 1500 ESPN. Oh yeah, there's a narrative.
Okay, I know. I would never take it that far. I would just say that I don't maybe think he's as fantastic as everyone thinks he is, but I would hate to completely have to restart with the new GM and eventual new
You could
coach.
fire your GM on the first day of free agency like the Redskins did.
That's a good world-class organization.
Who, by the way, the guy they fired was one of the only drafters who was better than Rick Spielman.
Yeah, he was the one guy that I thought was like, okay, I wouldn't mind having him instead of Spielman, but that's a super interesting
if we did fire Spielman and hire Scott McLaughlin, I actually would be all right with that, provided we could have security that his alcoholism has been taken care of.
Yeah.
Scott McLaughlin would be a catch.
Totally. I guess I would be more upset if we got rid of Zimmer, because that's like a complete rebuild, you know.
That would be insane. There will be. I mean, if we start out 3-4, you know, and the season isn't quite going, which is looking at the schedule absolutely possible, then you'll start to hear people call for, you know, just someone to blame.
It's already started. I mean, the stuff that came out after Red Elson's dad with the toxic leadership, there was a ton of people
was hilarious.
That were like,
that narrative was amazing.
Zimmer can't coach, he can't manage the personality side of it.
Get out of here with that.
You know, I don't know what more success they could have hoped for, especially considering what a dumpster fire last season was. But I don't know. I'm excited. I'm excited for the draft. I'm excited to see who they get. I don't expect them to draft up either. I know a lot of people look at that couple year span of what Spielman did and kind of think that that's the norm, but
it was a different roster.
They always remember and harp on the mistakes that were made or the things, the picks that don't work out, and it's easy to.
They don't look at the big picture.
No, I mean, you got to look at the whole draft and take into consideration everything that's done. I mean, you remember how he turned the lemons of Percy Harvin into lemonade. You know, I don't know who they picked with him, but that was a nice move. And
McKinnon was one of them.
That's right. Yeah, McKinnon
and Rhodes was one of them.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was the Rhodes draft.
And then I think there was a 7th rounder in there that didn't make the team, but it was McKinnon and Rhodes largely.
I mean, there are things like that just they don't bring up, and I think he does a good job. I like the fact that he takes a chance, and they're not all going to work out, but I think it's fine. I think it's a mistake to let him go at this point. But
there's math for this. I'm plugging another one of my articles.
There's math for everything.
Yep. So I did a piece about career AV and like who the best drafters are.
Yeah.
And the methodology is all in the article. So if you want to know more about like how I came to this conclusion, that's all explained there. But largely, if you take 2012 to 2015 drafts, and I wish I could put the 2016 one in, but like the players haven't separated enough. So like the fact that Laquan Treadwell didn't do anything isn't actually punishing the Vikings right now. And that's true for like everybody who had players that didn't play or players that did. Like it just doesn't tell us anything yet.
Yeah.
But 2012 to 2015, if you take that by Career AV, which is like a longevity measure and like a value measure that can like evaluate every position on the same scale, and go from 2012 to 2015. Spielman, I think, ranks 4th.
Wow.
Behind only Scott McLaughlin, who we just talked about, and then the Packers and Seahawks. And the Seahawks are ridiculous. The Seahawks are absolutely insane.
When did McLaughlin leave the Seahawks?
You mean the Redskins?
Didn't he?
March.
Wasn't he the GM for the Seahawks at some point, or am I thinking of somebody else?
John Schneider, I think, was the guy.
Yeah.
Was the guy? He was the guy that did all the 2011 and 2012 drafts were the crazy ones for the Seahawks. If you look at the lists of those drafts, it's like insane. They got like their whole defense in 2 drafts. Like every starter. It's amazing.
And then that guy makes the trade for Percy Harvin.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about
got him a
the
touchdown
Seahawks.
in a Super Bowl.
I feel like they're so blinded by their hatred of the poison pill Steve Hutchinson thing that they were just trying to hurt us in any way possible. I mean, they've taken more of our garbage than...
They helped us get Teddy. I love the Seahawks. They've been so great to us.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was John Schneider joined them in 2010, so it's been him for this whole time.
I don't know where I got that from.
Scott McLaughlin was the Redskins guy who's been... I don't know when he started there, but he's been their GM for a while, and he got fired in March.
Okay.
Oh no, he was on the Seahawks.
Yeah, I thought
I
he
just
was.
looked him up. He wasn't the GM, but he was there.
Okay. I knew that he had some hand in it somewhere.
And he was only the GM for the Redskins for 2 years. Oh my God! Imagine having a GM for 2 years and then firing him.
Yeah.
God. They're eventually going to decide not to pay Kirk Cousins, and then they're going to fall into the throes of hell. That roster is very close to falling apart.
Yeah, I don't understand why Terrell Pryor went there. I thought the Vikings had a good shot at him just because they're so dysfunctional.
I think he wanted the more money 1 year deal, and he wanted to bet on himself. And I think the Vikings offered him something more long term, but like with the lower overall potential to like make money.
It's like Alshon Jeffrey all over again, pretty
Yeah.
much. Yeah.
It was a trend with a bunch of players that did that with a bunch of teams.
Especially considering how worthless these contracts are, to be honest.
But yeah, so if you look at the entire like body of work that Spielman has put together since being promoted in 2012, he ranks in the top 5, and you would really, really have to cherry pick to like say that he doesn't. And a lot of that is, late round hits that like provide value, and they aren't super. I mean, these aren't Richard Shermans because that never happens, but they're guys like Shamar Stephen, who ends up being a reasonable backup / a palatable starter, and you got him in the 7th round. That's a huge, huge, huge hit.
Yeah, and Spielman's overseen the draft since Adrian Peterson joined the team, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, that regime
has
behaved a lot differently.
Kind of.
Yeah. The triangle of authority behaved a lot differently than what we have now, and that actually, bears itself out in the data as well. So I think it is more productive to look at what we have now, because the way that we behave, I don't give him any credit for like Everson Griffin or Adrian Peterson right now, just the same way that I don't really care about the Ponder pick anymore, because that we're not in that war room anymore. The war room is different.
Yeah. So with that, I mean, we did this a couple weeks ago. So I think we have like a couple minutes left. If you guys wanted to venture a guess on who you think we'll end up with on Friday night, if someone put a gun to your head and said, "Who is?"
So I think. So last time I said Dan Feeney, and if I had a gun to my head and I had to predict someone at 48, it'd be Dan Feeney. But I think at the end of Friday night, so including the 3rd round picks, I'd be very shocked, or I'd be actually pretty upset if we didn't come away with either Pat Elflein or Ethan Posick. We will have opportunities to draft them, and I'd be pretty upset if we declined it and then missed out.
Okay. I'm hearing Eifling a lot too.
He's gotten quite the. He's on my list. He's from Ohio State. He's gotten quite the jump in the last, little bit. On Arif Hassan does his yearly consensus big board where he takes everybody's draft boards and like combines them, so you can kind of get a nice clean idea of like what the entire draft community thinks. And Alfine's about 60th, or not 60th. He's like somewhere in the 50s on that list, so pretty close to where we pick. But I think he's the third best interior lineman in this draft, so I wouldn't be surprised if he was gone. Because like you take Forrest Lamp and Dan Feeney, and you were sitting here trying to get through the whole top 50 with only 2 interior linemen going, that might be tough.
Joe Mixon.
Yay.
Whew. There it is. It'd be interesting.
I've said smokescreen for weeks that's what Spielman was doing, and it's a deeper position in the draft than defensive lineman, where I feel like we have a need, but we have a need. So I'm just gonna go out there on a limb and say Joe Mixon's your 2017 Minnesota Viking rookie.
So a lot of the guys, there you go. A lot of the guys we've been talking about are kind of, these first round guys that might fall for a reason. Like Joe Mixon's one of them. Dan Feeney's one. Well, I don't think people actually are putting him in the first round if he didn't have it. I don't think people care about his concussions. But other guys we've talked about, Malik McDowell, even Jabril Peppers and Reuben Foster, which are later, more recent developments. But if none of those guys fall and the draft kind of goes as it should, and we don't actually have these like amazing opportunities and all the guys go ahead of us. The last guy I have on my list is Dorian Johnson. He's a guard from Pitt. And we could actually get him at 79. So he's my backup option, and he might be a little bit of a reach at 48, but he'd be a reach I'm okay with.
Okay.
And he would be the consolation prize if we really, really want to go offensive linemen, but they're all gone. He would be the consolation prize, and he's not a guy that we should be upset about at all.
Am I wrong for thinking that Jabril Peppers is something I want to put on my salad, or is that...
Jabril Peppers, I just got sold on him, so I watched a really cool video from Brett Kallman, who does film breakdowns, and he explained Jabril Peppers in it. And Jabril Peppers would actually be awesome on this defense because he's really good at defending the edge, not rushing the edge like a defensive end, but like defending outside runs and stuff and keeping contained. And his supposed lack of coverage skills are a little bit of a myth because Michigan's scheme made him funnel everything to the inside and it made it look like he was letting people go, but that was like what he was coached to do. And he bought 100% into the scheme, which is also an important distinction.
Yeah, I wonder... my pick is Mixon too, actually. For a long time I was really leaning towards Curtis Samuel, and I think a lot of that's more personal feeling than anything else. But like I said earlier, I think that the offense really needs a playmaker, and I think the team understands also the fact that, not so much that the fans expect it, but that the offense has had a lot of success in its rushing game, and that's something that they want to continue doing, to keep the ball out of the other team's hands and everything, especially in our division. So I think bringing in, if Mixon is really as talented as people are saying, arguably even the most talented player in the entire draft, regardless of position, I really do think he'll be available. I just can't imagine that there's some teams that won't take him at all, but other teams value him high enough to take him in the first round. I really think that he'll be available. My concern really, I guess, is both him and Samuel will be available and they won't take either, and then I'll just check out for the rest of the offseason, remainder of my life. But
I think Mixon goes to the Chiefs at 27.
Ooh.
They just lost Jamal Charles.
Yeah. Did he end up even getting signed anywhere, Charles?
No. Marshawn Lynch came out of retirement and got signed before Charles did, and almost got signed before Peterson did.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of did. I mean,
yeah, they just needed to work the trade out.
Stuff out, but he was
like the Raiders. deliberately chose Marshawn Lynch over Adrian Peterson. It was not an availability issue.
And I feel like the Patriots showed interest also in Lynch.
Yeah, and then they just picked up Rex Burkhead or whoever.
Do we know Lynch's contract? How much he got?
Not much.
Didn't they have to trade?
I think it's
for
about the
his
same as
rights?
Peterson.
So.
Yeah, they swapped late round picks. They
Okay.
didn't. It was a very small trade.
But it wasn't like a continuation of some monster contract that he had.
No. It's like $3 million or something. It's kind of a similar deal, I think, to what Peterson got.
Well, he said, I think the last year of his career that he hasn't spent a dime of his football contract money, and
I love Marshawn Lynch so much.
I don't know if you ever watched like Conan O'Brien's video game segments where he rates video games, but Lynch has been on a few of those, and he's endlessly entertaining.
Oh, I'm wrong. 2-year deal, base $9 million, max of 16.5 with all the incentives that he has on it.
I really, and I was going to bring this up earlier, but I wonder how somebody like Peterson, who has been so successful his entire life and by probably all accounts is surrounded by more than a couple yes men, like, takes this reality, like how he justifies it against riding a camel at his birthday party,
He doesn't live in reality, man.
Well, I know, but you feel like maybe he's found, like I said, justified a way to explain why there wasn't more interest, but you would think that it was him and Lynch were kind of the two premier guys for the end of the aughts, similar running backs, and especially for Lynch.
I think
to be
teams have
retired
watched Peterson's tape. I think they've seen his tape and they've seen that he's lost his burst. And that was true in 2015 too, even when he was racking up yards with all his attempts. He doesn't burst through holes the same way he used to, and teams know that.
Yeah, you could see it. I mean, even that, I think it was Oakland, he had that long touchdown against to win the game.
Yeah, there were a couple runs against Detroit where he busted out but then got chased down.
Yeah, it's like his head wasn't bobbing up and down anymore like it used to. He was kind of pushing himself so hard.
Lynch has
I wonder how he would test in a combine
too. Oh,
what was that? I didn't hear that.
I said Lynch has had a better injury history of late as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, taking a year off to just completely get healthy is amazing. And now he's in his hometown of Oakland. I love it. I love him.
He's a Bay Area guy. I'm surprised he got that. That's a lot of money for it. Well, it'll be
$4.5 a year.
see, I suppose. But yeah, with that, I think we kind of are up against the wall here. So, any closing thoughts? I'm excited. I do want people to know that we are going to be having a draft party. A lot of us are going to be around tomorrow night for the first round in the message board, just doing what Luke talked about, kind of rooting against certain teams, taking players that we want and whatnot. But
anyone but Kamara.
There you go. Friday night, I think around 5:30. There'll be links up everywhere. I'll write an article. I'll post it on Reddit and stuff. But there should be a few of us around chatting it up. I'm sure, Luke, you'll be at some Vikings bar down in LA.
I'll be with my dad. I think we're going to sit outside by the pool.
Does your dad live down there too?
No, he's coming to visit.
Perfect timing. But yeah, with that, thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll be back. Sounds like 2 weeks, but there'll be a ton of coverage the rest of the week. And next week, tons of reactions on the site, on Facebook at purplePTSD, on Twitter at purplePTSD, and eventually on Instagram. So thanks for listening.